Goldfish. They're cute, they're orange, and they're happy to see you. Well, at least some of them are. But either way, people these days seem to be buying them by the boatload. Why? Well, today we'll be trying to figure out how Goldfish got to be the fastest growing cracker brand in the US. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other snack food origin stories you would like to hear about. Okay, time to go fishing. Back in 1937, Margaret Rudkin had a problem. Her son Mark suffered from asthma and severe allergies, which doctors at the time blamed on eating processed food and preservatives. It might have actually been a gluten allergy, which would make Mark the world's first hipster, so he might have also made his own artisanal mustache wax. Whatever the case, Mark couldn't eat commercially produced baked goods. So Margie began baking her own for him using whole wheat, honey, and other very normal bread ingredients. After a few unsuccessful attempts, she finally made a loaf he deemed worthy of eating, and Mark's doctors were so impressed they recommended it to their other patients. That success gave her the confidence to go around to nearby stores, convincing them to stock her homemade bread. But it turned out to be harder than she thought. Not the bread, the convincing. Why? Because of the price. At the time, a regular loaf sold for $0.10, whereas Margaret's bread was outlandishly priced at a whole quarter. Meanwhile, her husband was a stockbroker on Wall Street and would take her special health bread into work with him. We all know finance bros love a good bread. More importantly, he also brought it to specialty stores in the city, who started selling it exactly as Marge had hoped. Before she knew it, she became a momtrepreneur, opening her first factory in 1940 and creating Pepperidge Farm. In 1961, Rudkin sold Pepperidge Farm to Campbell's, and as part of that sale, she received $28.2 million worth of Campbell's stock and a seat on the board, which is especially impressive considering at the time it was illegal for her to open a bank account without a man's signature. Maybe that's why she preferred stocks to cash. Anyway, in 1962, flush with bread and soup money, Margie made like Clark Griswold and went on a European vacation. She stopped in Switzerland, and while she was there, she tried a popular snack called Goldfischli, which was a variation of an even older European snack called Zwieback. And if you're wondering what that is, please hop into our DeLorean so we can take you Zwieback in time to find out. The Zwieback story starts in Prussia in 1618. That's when the 30 Years' War began, and as we all know, there's nothing like horrific, religiously driven violence to create food innovations. Long story short, the war was Protestants versus Catholics, and one of their many throwdowns. But this one began more theatrically, with Protestant noblemen throwing 2 Catholics and their secretary out a window in an event known as the Third Defenestration of Prague, which begs the question, what were the other 2? Regardless, the 30 Years' War shockingly lasted 30 years, and the worst part of it was the famine. Armies at the time were usually fed by stealing from peasants, but when the peasants have nothing, what do the soldiers eat? Enter Albrecht von Wallenstein, a superstar Catholic general who is said to have invented a new kind of bread to feed his mercenaries. Von Wallenstein's bread, known as Zwieback, was more portable and less crumbly. History credits him with its creation, but let's be real. Albrecht, in addition to having the most metal name of all time, was a rich dude and most likely took credit for someone else's work. Zwieback, for the record, is a yeasted bread made with eggs that is then sliced and baked again until it becomes hard and crunchy, like Melba toast or biscotti. In fact, surprisingly enough, the name Zwieback comes from the fact that it's baked twice, and not from the sound a person makes when they're choking on a mouthful of super dry bread. What does all this have to do with goldfish? We're getting there. But first we're going to need you to hop back in the DeLorean so we can head Zwieback to the future, at least relatively speaking. In 1910, Oscar Robert Camley, a baker by trade, opened a commercial bakery and a biscuit factory in a small town in Switzerland. He called his company Camley because he loved to name things after himself. He then had a son and named him Oscar J. Camley to keep that love going. Eventually, Oscar J. took over his father's business, got married, and then had a son he named, wait for it, Oscar A. Camley. Because why make things easy? Anyhow, the Camley factory made a lot of very popular breads and snacks, and one of them was Zwieback, no longer just for soldiers. It had long since come to be regarded as a slightly sweet, crunchy treat that went great with jam and tea. The jam, of course, being on the Zwieback, not in the tea. It was also popular to have Zwieback with an adult beverage or two, and it had practical uses. For example, because it was so hard, people gave Zwieback to teething babies, and because it was easy on the tummy, people would eat it first after a bout of flu. Fast forward to 1958, and Oscar J. was living his sweet Nepo baby life, unaware he was about to have his brush with greatness. It was his wife's birthday, and after having a celebratory breakfast with her, Oscar J. went into the office. Perhaps his first gift didn't go over well. Perhaps it had been a new broom, or one of those fancy new electric can openers. Perhaps the missus was salty that he decided to work on her birthday, or maybe he just really loved her. But whatever the reason, he sat in his office trying to think up something to give his wife on her special day. His wife, incidentally, was a Pisces, which is symbolized by two fish swimming in different directions. And for whatever reason, astrology was on Oscar J.'s mind, so he sketched a happy fish, maybe thinking this would be a hint for his wife to also be happy. He liked what he saw so much, he summoned his minions to make his sketch into a mold. By dinner time, he had baked his wife a bouquet of Zwieback fishies, and we must assume she loved them, because he then began producing them for market. He called them Goldfishly, which is good because from what we know of this family, he almost certainly wanted to call them Oscar Camley fish. Anyway, Goldfishly became very popular. People then, like people today, loved a food made to look like something that is not food. So in a sense, they were the dino nuggets of their day. And that brings us back to Margie, who tried the Goldfishly on her European vacation and loved them. She also loved that they were safe to feed her son, who by that time was a grown-ass man. Nonetheless, like the good capitalist she was, she immediately bought the license to the trademark, shape, and recipe. As for Oscar, the agreement didn't stop him from making Goldfishly. So at this point, the evolution of goldfish split into two species. The European Goldfishly cracker continued on as an adult munchie to be had with an aperitif and is still available today, while the American Goldfish cracker's journey had just begun. Goldfish crackers hit U.S. shelves in 1963, and they came in 5 flavors. Lightly salted, or what would come to be known as original, was the basic version, and tasted like a saltine cracker. There was also cheese, barbecue, pizza, and smoky, which wasn't weird because at the time, cigarettes were still okay in the kitchen. It wasn't until 3 years later that what has become the most popular flavor was introduced: cheddar cheese. Move over, flavorless original. Cheddar cheese is now what most people think of when they think of goldfish. After that, goldfish crackers took off. Literally, they were taken on the Space Shuttle Discovery's mission, the first after the Challenger disaster. And in the 1970s and 1980s, famous food snob Julia Child even served a bowl of goldfish at her Thanksgiving feast as a munchie to go with a martini. A lot of that success comes from marketing. Early in goldfish history, the company decided to target children, so a mascot, Finn, was introduced. He was a smiling goldfish with a future so bright he had to wear shades. He was featured on the bag, and he even had his own slogan, "The snack that smiles back." Not great, but we've heard worse. Kids apparently liked Finn because they took to goldfish like gangbusters. There was also the fact that the crackers fit perfectly in a sweaty toddler palm, and the fish shape was cute and playful. Moreover, parents were on board because the company only used natural food dyes, so goldfish seemed relatively healthy. In 1997, Finn's smile got stamped on the actual goldfish cracker, but not on all the crackers. In any given bag, only 40% of the fishies are happy. Those are presumably the ones that have come to terms with being eaten. By the late 90s, when kids were more awesome, Pepperidge Farm introduced flavor-blasted goldfish crackers with tastes like extra cheddar and slamming sour cream and onion. Mild-mannered Finn was pushed aside for a more in-your-face mascot named Boomer, whose method of applying flavor was through dynamite. Alas, Boomer was not long for this world, and in a series of ads at the turn of the century, Finn returned with a group of friends, including Brooke, the Parmesan nerd, Gilbert, a pretzel-flavored scaredy cat, and Extreme, the flavor-blasted one who now liked extreme sports instead of explosives. And for some reason, they all lived under a kid's bed. You know, where the monsters are? Those friends were eventually retired, but Finn still graces the front of goldfish packages. Anyway, by 1999, Goldfish were so popular, they inspired jealousy in other cracker companies. Nabisco, maker of the Ritz cracker, even tried to eat into Goldfish's market share by introducing their own fish-shaped cracker. See, what happened was, Nabisco had teamed up with Nickelodeon for some brand optimization. At the time, Nickelodeon's hit show was Cat Dog, a show about a biological abomination called Cat Dog, with a cat and dog fused together, prompting a generation of children to wonder, but how does it poop? The Cat Dog product Nabisco introduced, however, featured a cheese-flavored, fish-shaped cracker. Pepperidge Farm was having none of it. They sued, and they won. The debacle earned Nabisco a stern lesson on the difference between inventing and stealing. To this day, Nabisco does not offer fish-shaped products of any kind. They do, however, go hard on bears with Teddy Grahams, and bears eat fish. In 2020, as the pandemic was starting and Pepperidge Farm's executives were struggling to turn the cat filter off in their Zoom meetings, they realized that the big problem with kids is that they grow up, and when they grow up, they don't want to look like babies eating goldfish crackers. So executives decided they needed to get the little goldfish cracker to start adulting. To that end, they began introducing flavors for people who pay taxes, like Parmesan cheese, flavors for being on a physician-mandated diet, like pretzel flavored, made with whole grain, and flavors for sad divorced dads, like Flavor Blasted Kick It Up a Nacho. And in 2022, they launched Megabites in sharp cheddar and cheddar jalapeno, probably because adults have bigger mouths to fill. After that, a team-up with Frank's Red Hot gave the world Spicy Goldfish, because adults like spicy things, even if they have to pay for it later. Then came Old Bay flavored goldfish. Yes, Goldfish did a crossover with a seasoning blend meant for actual seafood. And why not? Even if the flavor didn't appeal to adults, surely the irony would. Anyway, in 2024, they temporarily changed the name of Goldfish crackers to Chilean sea bass crackers, which, yes, sounds more grown up, but kind of makes no sense. After all, goldfish aren't a fish we eat to begin with. If anything, real goldfish are a pet people won at a fair, whose demise was mourned with a somber toilet funeral. How Chilean sea bass line up with that is anyone's guess. By the way, if you're surprised you missed Chilean sea bass, it's because the only way to get them was ordering online. In stores, the name stayed the same, because for whatever reason, this was a publicity stunt that got very little, publicity. Of course, going after adults didn't mean they were about to give up on the kiddie demographic, so they did brand crossovers with The Mandalorian, Toy Story, and Mickey Mouse. Turns out, kids liked snacking on their favorite, even when that favorite was suddenly shaped like what might be a stormtrooper. It's hard to tell, they're very bulbous. If you're wondering whether Campbell's attempt to get adults to eat more goldfish worked, well, Campbell's now manufactures 50 million goldfish crackers every day, sells over 120 billion goldfish a year, and adults are eating half of those. And that doesn't include when parents get hungry and steal their toddler snacks. Of the original 5 flavors, barbecue and pizza have been reworked into new flavor profiles. Smoky, well, that's probably better off dead. But the original, it's still available in stores everywhere. They also now come in 20 different varieties. Some are puffed, some are crisped, some are limited edition Snoopy peppermint cocoa flavored graham cracker goldfish. The bottom line is that by holding on to the kiddies and bringing in the adults, goldfish sales have increased by 33% since 2021, and they show no signs of stopping. That surge made them the fastest growing cracker brand in the United States. Way to grow, little fishies. So what do you think? And what's your favorite goldfish flavor? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from Weird History Food.